Hey, so good afternoon and welcome. Just outside Mohegan Sun Arena box office, we are set for the public weigh-ins here for Bellator's return to Mohegan Sun. Without a doubt, our favorite venue here on the East Coast. So glad to be back. Our second time here in 2017. We've got a great main event in store for tomorrow night as Gegard Mousasi, one of the very best in the sport of MMA, makes his Bellator debut tomorrow night here at Mohegan Sun, live and free on Spike, as he takes on a tough challenge for anyone. One of Bellator's very best, the former Bellator middleweight world champion, Alexander Storm Shlemenko. That'll be in tomorrow night's main event. We'll kick off the weigh-ins here momentarily. Our prelims will be first up on the scale. You can see the prelims live and free, of course, on Bellator.com. And then, of course, the main card, as always, live and free on Spike tomorrow night, and it's all presented by Miller Lite. Today's weigh-ins, tomorrow night's action, all sanctioned by and under the supervision of the Mohegan Tribal Department of Athletic Regulation. The man in charge, of course, Mr. Michael Mazzulli. Chief of the Mohegan Tribe is Lynn Malerba. As we get set for the weigh-ins, box office right behind us, still open, tickets available. If you're here on site and you don't have your tickets, make sure you stop by now, pick them up while they're still available. Again, the box office here open right behind our weigh-in setup, just outside Mohegan Sun Arena. I'm Bellator Cage announcer Michael Williams. With me, as always, on stage and cage side tomorrow night, the lovely ladies from Bellator MMA, Mercedes and Lindsay. Corey Schaefer joining us for the official particulars here momentarily. When the fighters make it to the scale, we'll welcome Mr. Rich Chow, father of two, onto the stage for the weigh-ins. In fact, let's do that right now. If you'd please welcome one half of the broadcast team live and free on Spike to put the fighters on the scale. This is Mr. Jimmy Smith.
Thank you so much. We get it started in the lightweight division, 155 pounds. Dean Hancock versus John Beneducci. First to the scale, fighting out of Danbury, Connecticut. Please welcome Dean Hancock. Record of 2-1, 1 knockout, 1 submission. .156 on the dot for Dean Hancock. And his opponent out of Brooklyn, New York. Please welcome John Beneducci. Also 2-1 as a pro. Both of those wins by submission. .155 and a quarter for John Beneducci. They'll kick it off for us. Dean Hancock versus John Beneducci. Next up, the featherweights, 145. It's Pete Rogers versus Timothy Wheeler. First to scale, fighting out of Norwich, Connecticut. Please welcome Pete Rogers. .144 for Pete Rogers. And his opponent out of New York, New York. Please welcome Timothy Wheeler. .144 for Timothy Wheeler. Let's give it up for the featherweights. Pete Rogers versus Timothy Wheeler, ladies and gentlemen. Our third fight in the welterweight division, 170 pounds, is Joaquin Buckley versus Vinicius de Jesus. First to scale, fighting out of St. Louis, Missouri. Please welcome Joaquin Buckley. Record of 7-1, 5 wins by knockout. 171 for Joaquin Buckley. And his opponent from Rio Grande, Brazil, please welcome Vinicius de Jesus. A record of 5-1, 2 wins by knockout, 2 by submission. $170 on the dot for Vinicius de Jesus. Two outstanding up-and-coming welterweights, Joaquin Buckley versus Vinicius de Jesus. Moving up to the middleweight division, 185 pounds, it's Steve Skrzat versus Costello Van Steenis. First to the scale, fighting out of Rhode Island. Please welcome Steve Skrzat. £186 for Steve Skrzat. And his opponent, all the way from Holland, please welcome Costello Van Steenis. A record of 8-1, 1 win by knockout, 5 by submission. $185.25 for Costello Van Steenis. Let's give it up for the middleweight, Steve Skrzat versus Costello Van Steenis. Next up, a catchweight, 195 pounds. It's Alec Hubin versus Jordan Young. First to the scale from Pompton Lake, New Jersey. Please welcome Alec Hubin. Record of 5-3. 194 for Alec Hubin. And his opponent, fighting out of Coconut Creek, Florida. Please welcome Jordan Young. Undefeated at 7-0, 5 of those wins by submission. $200 for Jordan Young. Let's give it up for him. Alec Hubin versus Jordan Young, ladies and gentlemen. This next fight, a catchweight, 150 pounds. It's Matthew Denning versus Don Shanis. First to scale, fighting out of Lewiston, Maine. Please welcome Matthew Denning. $149.75 for Matthew Denning. And his opponent, fighting out of Easton, Massachusetts, please welcome Don Shanis. Record of 2-1, 1 win by submission. $150 on the dot for Don Shanis. Matthew Denning versus Don Shanis. Give it up for him. Next up, a catchweight, 150 pounds. It's Vovka Clay versus Frank Sforza. First to the scale, fighting out of New Hampshire. Please welcome Vovka Clay. Record of 3-2 as a pro, 2 wins by submission. 150 on the dot for Vovka Clay. And his opponent, fighting out of Rockland, Massachusetts, please welcome Frank Sforza. Undefeated at 6-0, 1 win by knockout, 3 by submission. 149 in the corner for Frank Sforza. Vovka Clay versus Frank Sforza. Give it up for him. Moving on to the lightweight division, 155 pounds, is Jose Antonio Perez versus Kevin Carrier. First to the scale, fighting out of Newark, New Jersey. Please welcome Jose Antonio Perez. Making his pro debut. £153 for Jose Antonio Perez. And his opponent, fighting out of Rochester, New York, please welcome Kevin Carrier. Also making his pro debut. $156 for Kevin Carrier. The lightweights pro debuters, Jose Antonio Perez versus Kevin Carrier. And our final preliminary fight in the flyweight division, 125 pounds, it's Billy Giovanella versus John Lopez. First to scale, fighting out of Norwood, Massachusetts. Please welcome Billy Giovanella. Okay, man down. 125 on the dot for Billy Giovanella. And his opponent, fighting out of Hartford, Connecticut, please welcome John Lopez. Record of 6-4 as a pro, 4 wins by submission. Always the little guys. 126 on the dot for John Lopez. Right over here, brother. Our final preliminary fight, Billy Giovanella versus John Lopez. And on to the televised portion of our show. Of course, check us out on Spike. We start in the women's flyweight division, 125 pounds. Lisa Blaine versus Anna Hulatan. First to the scale, fight out of North Haven, Connecticut. Please welcome Lisa Blaine. 1-0, that one win by knockout. $122 3/4 for Lisa Blaine. And her opponent, fighting out of Las Vegas, Nevada, by way of San Francisco, California, Anna Hulatan. Record of 2-2, 1 win by knockout. 125.5 for Anna Hulatan. The ladies will kick it off for us. Lisa Blaine versus Anna Hulatan. Give it up for them. Next up, the lightweights, 155 pounds. It's Marcus Surin versus Ryan Quinn. First to scale, fighting out of New York, New York. Please welcome Marcus Surin. Record of 4-0, 2 wins by knockout, 1 by submission. 155 on the dot for Marcus Surin. And his opponent, fighting out of Coconut Creek, Florida, please welcome Ryan Quinn. Record of 13-7, 2 wins by knockout, 4 by submission. $155.5 for Ryan Quinn. Give it up for the lightweights. Marcus Surin versus Ryan Quinn, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, a women's flyweight fight, 125 pounds. It's Christina Williams versus Heather Hardy. First to scale, fighting out of Edmond, Oklahoma. Please welcome Christina Williams. And making her pro debut. $126 on the dot for Christina Williams. And her opponent, fighting out of Brooklyn, New York. Please welcome Heather Hardy. Undefeated at 1-0, that 1 win by knockout. $126 for Heather Hardy. Going to be a great fight. 125, Christina Williams versus Heather Hardy, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, the welterweights, 170 pounds. It's Zach Busha versus Neiman Gracie. First to scale, fighting out of Lawrence, Kansas. Please welcome Zach Busha. Record of 18-8, 6 wins by knockout, 9 by submission. Right over here, brother. 170.25 for Zach Busha. And his opponent, fighting out of New York City, New York. Please welcome Neiman Gracie. A record of 6-0, no surprise. 5 of those wins by submission. $170.5 for Neiman Gracie. The welterweights, 170 pounds, Zach Busha versus Neiman Gracie. And our main event in the middleweight division, 185 pounds, it is Alexander Storm Shlemenko versus Gegard Mousasi. First to the scale from Omsk, Russia. Please welcome Alexander the Storm Shlemenko. Record of 56-9, 31 wins by knockout, 9 by submission. 186 on the dot for Alexander Shlemenko. Alexander, you said this will be the bloodiest fight in Bellator history. How do you make that happen?
Ты сказал, что это будет самый кровавый бой в истории Беллатора. Как ты это сделаешь?
Вот этими кулаками.
With these fists.
You heard it. Man, a few words, but a lot of punches. And his opponent, all the way from Holland, making his Bellator debut. Please welcome Gegard Mousasi. Also very experienced, 42-6-2. 185 3/4 for Gegard Mousasi. Gegard, your Bellator debut, a lot of eyes on you, taking on the former champion. How do you put on a show for all these fans?
Well, my opponent comes to fight, so it's going to be a good fight. You will bring it, and I will give it.
This is our main event. Do not miss it. Alexander Storm Shlemenko versus Gegard Mousasi. Always a great crowd here at the Mohegan Sun. We'll see you at the fights tomorrow night.
Jimmy Smith, thank you very much. Rich, Mr. Scott Coker, Lindsay and Mercedes. Hey, for all of us here at Bellator, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night right inside Mohegan Sun Arena. Tickets available right here at the box office. Tomorrow night, the prelims first on Bellator.com. And then, of course, the main card live and free on Spike. You can see it live. Tickets right behind us. Thank you for joining us for the weigh-ins, and we'll see you tomorrow night at Bellator MMA.